Managing Partner here at CSI. Thanks a lot for joining us again, Seth. Take it away.
Thanks, Connor. And let me add my welcome to everyone that has joined us this afternoon on this topic of motivating multi-generational teams. Back in 2009, Competitive Solutions, we started receiving a large number of requests for team training around conflict resolution. And it was interesting to us because we had never received so many requests in such a short time. And as we had looked closer at this conflict within teams, what we learned was that with the economic downturn, with the downsizing in organizations, with people reshuffling here and there to different places in the organization, teams, business units, work groups were now much different. The dynamics were much different now because what you had is you had really 4 generations, the mature generation, the baby boomers, the Gen Xers, and the Gen Yers. They were all working together side by side. They would be sitting at a conference table working side by side, and they were all used to different things and how they did business. And that was really the start of it. And then as we looked more into it and got more requests, the topic became, how do we motivate multi-generational teams? Because each team, each work group, each individual employee has got different wants and needs. So how, as a leader, as a manager, how can I meet their wants, their needs effectively? So that was where this topic came from, and it's a topic that I've spoken at conferences about, and I get a lot of questions around the new today in terms of how diverse the teams are in terms of age ranges with that. Let's talk a little bit about motivation and start off motivation challenges faced. Employees are unique, and at the end of the day, they all have their different interests, their different hobbies, lifestyles they lead. The only thing they have in common is the business. So from 8 to 5, how do we set aside our differences? How do we bring them together, and how do we effectively manage them and motivate them, knowing they have different wants and needs around that? What most organizations do is they have the traditional incentive programs, which in my opinion really have no lasting effect. They're not sustainable. You can hand out, you can have a party and have the president do a rah-rah speech and hand out quarterly bonuses or year-end bonuses, and people feel good about the contributions. But when they come back to work a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, they're really going to go back to their old ways, and they're going to need some type of motivation, something that is going to get them on board and want to help advance the business, help them move it forward. So that's what we're going to talk about today is really how do you create a culture within your organization where people come in and they feel motivated day in and day out, and that they know that they're a part of the business and they're being successful. And as a manager, you are meeting the wants and needs of the 4 generations around that. Connor had mentioned at the start we're going to do some different polls today, and we're going to pause here. Connor, if you would launch our first poll about some of the incentive programs that our participants have seen at their organizations.
All right, about 10 more seconds. All right.
Great, thanks, Connor. And looking at the results that came in, the majority of you had mentioned cash rewards, gift cards. Some of you also mentioned frequent parties and picnics with that. Didn't get a lot on the preferred parking spaces there. So what is motivation? This is my definition of motivation, and I'm sure you've come across many different definitions, but intrinsic enthusiasm one has about exerting effort directly toward achieving the goals around that. So that's kind of the framework, that my definition around that. Here's to me is the most important question. How can leaders affect motivation? And I believe that, as I said before, each generation has got different wants and needs. And so what a leader can do, what an organization can do, is provide an environment or provide a culture that is conducive and supportive of exhibiting motivated behavior. We're going to talk later on about recognition and how recognition can help motivate people within your organization, within your workforce around that. And let's talk about the workforce today. You've heard me very briefly at the top talk about the 4 different generations that we're seeing in organizations today. It's more diverse than ever before, as I had indicated. Much more interactions than generations past. And you've got people that previously had not sat down side by side, worked together on a project because of the economic downturn. You've got them now working together. And here are the 4 generations that I'm going to refer to and talk about going forward. The first one is the mature generation. These are folks that are nearing retirement. They're at retirement, and perhaps they had planned on retiring back in 2009, 2010, but because of the economic downturn, their 401k, their retirement accounts, their pension plans had taken a significant hit. It's requiring them to hang on and work an additional 2 to 3 years so they can bank some more money so then they can live comfortably in their retirement years with that. The next generation is the baby boomers who grew up in the 70s when there was a lot of 60s and 70s, and a lot of social change within our country taking place. Generation X, I am a member of Generation X. I grew up in the MTV era when computers and technology really became a part of our everyday lives with that. And then the Generation Y, which I define as the folks entering the workforce today, that their world, their communication is around Twitter and text messages and 140 characters with that. And so you've got those 4 generations there working together for the first time, and it's creating conflict. It's creating angst among the leadership on, hey, how do I motivate people within my team, within my organization? And they're all different. And so then we've got this in Bureau of Labor Statistics. So the workforce today, or actually back in 2010 is the most recent we could find on this, the majority of the workforce is the baby boomers, about 38%. The next is the Generation X, which is 32%, and then you'll see Generation Y, 24%. And you'll see the mature generation. Close to 5% of our workforce today is in what we define as the mature generation with that. So let's talk about these 4 generations, put a little more context around each one of them. Hardworking, very loyal to their organizations. They may have only had 1, 2, 3 jobs. This may have been the only job they ever had was they started working at this company, and they're still working at this company. Economically conscientious. Their parents grew up in the Great Depression. They themselves have seen our country go through several recessions during their time. More trusting of authority. They're the ones that they don't question authority. They just do what they're told because that's how they were brought up, and that's how they work. And then they've also got strong moral obligations around that. For them, being motivated is the right thing to do, and it goes back to being loyal to the company. The company's been loyal to me for 35 years. I'm going to be motivated for the company because that's the right thing. Baby boomers. A little bit rebellious, as we talked earlier about. A lot of social change going on in the 60s and 70s when they were growing up. So they've got their own viewpoint. Driven by pursuit of goals, open to alternatives. Again, going back to that social change, the 60s and 70s, they're open to hearing different viewpoints. Affecting change is very motivating for me. So if they can come in and knowing that they're helping build a new product, or if they know that they're affecting the way the business goes, that's what motivates them. That's what makes them feels good, makes them get up in the morning. MTV generation, that's me. When we were in college, when I was in college, I remember that was the advent of computers coming online, and when that's really the whole technology thing kind of in the 80s and 90s kind of came into play, changing the way that we did a lot of different things. Seek meaning and balance in their lives. Some of the folks in this generation, they would rather have an extra week of vacation than a pay raise. They want to have time away from the office. They want to have time to spend with their friends and family. So think about this, motivating some folks in Gen Xers, maybe it's extra vacation time away from the office is what drives them. And then finally, I'm motivated by life, not by my work. And then our last group that we're going to talk about today, the Generation Y. They're resilient, hardworking, optimistic about the future, but they're also realistic around that. They relate best to the mature generation, but however, how they're a little bit different is that while the mature generation is used to your traditional 7 to 4, 8 to 5 type work time frames, Generation Y kind of wants to set their own hours. And I have a couple employees in my office who I would classify as Gen Yers, and they like to work, hey, 10 to 7, 10 to 8. They kind of want to set their own work hours, but they get the work done. So you can see as we've gone through these 4 different generations, a lot of differences between the groups around that. So, Connor, let's pause here and launch our second poll around just getting a better understanding of the audience on the webinar today, where they see themselves.
More seconds. All right.
Thanks, Connor. And I just wanted to share this statistic with you. One of my colleagues brought this in. I think got it out off a magazine while he was traveling. But to me, it validated what my customers, my clients are hearing out there about conflict between the multi-generations, with that 60% of employers are experiencing intergenerational conflict around that. So what are some of the differences that we see in organizations today that's causing the conflict? They all have different views of life and work, and I talked about it earlier. The mature generation, loyal to organizations, work 8 to 5, 8 to 6, work hard. Gen Y is looking at different work hours because they want to do things differently. And then you got the Gen Xers, want more time away from the office. They want that work-life balance, motivated by different things. Mature people motivated by money. They're ready to retire. Gen Y people motivated by flexibility in how they do their job. So different things motivating different people. They all react differently to how they're managed. And the mature generation, they're not going to question authority. They're just going to do it because they're loyal to the organization. Or you might see some pushback from someone in the Gen X or the Gen Y type environment with that. And then different methods for communicating. And this is, I was at a company in November last year, and I was told there was a couple folks there that they have email addresses, but you don't email them because to this day they have never even opened their email or checked their email. And what I was told, they said, hey, if you want to talk to me about something, you pick the phone up and you give me a call, or you come down to my office and let's talk face-to-face about it. So they've got different methods. I had another person tell me, I've got people I work with that they like to send text messages. I don't know how to send a text message on my phone. So for me, that's not an appropriate way of communicating. So what we've got to do is we've got to break down these barriers and put in ways that's consistent for everyone in the organization. And the final one is different definitions of success. Success to someone in the baby boomer generation may be different to someone in the Generation X generation. So, hey, Connor, let's launch our third poll here and just to see what folks say is some of the issues they're seeing in their organization.
Okay, give it 10 more seconds. And there you go.
Thanks, Connor. It is my belief that organizations spend more time focusing their employees, or their employees spend more time focused on what they have in conflict versus what they have in common. And I said it before, at the end of the day, the only thing everyone in the organization has in common is the business. So with that being said, there is a need for everyone to be connected to the business. And what I'm talking about there is connected in terms of business performance, business results, so that even though you've got 4 different generations on a team, on a business unit work group, they're all connected to the business the same way. The desire to have consistency in their actions. And what I'm talking about there is desire to see that everyone is actively engaged in the business, not selective engagement, but actively engaged in the business. And I can look across my team and look at their contributions utilizing a tool I'll share with you in a few minutes. The need for clarity on what is to be done. And when I talk about clarity, I'm talking about a clear, consistent message about the business. Here's what happened last week. Here's what we need to do this week. Coming together on a weekly basis to talk about the business And then the final one is around recognition. And if you've been on my webinars that I've delivered before, you know how a strong proponent I am of better recognition in organizations, because many organizations are very quick to run out and to provide feedback to employees when things aren't going so well. But what they fail to do, in my opinion, is when things are going well or someone has really stepped up and done something above and beyond their regular job duties, we don't have mechanisms, processes in place to provide that effective recognition to that. And I'm going to share with you a way can you start driving a culture of recognition. And there's a company that I worked with, and I didn't come up with this idea, but they came up with it, where they have really brought about a culture of recognition in their organizations. Very unique in how they do it, but it's something that I've borrowed from them and implemented at other customers who had problems around recognition, and it's something that doesn't cost them anything other than time around that. So let's take these four that we see here: connected, consistency, clarity, and recognition. Let's take these four and talk about how can you motivate your multi-generational teams utilizing the four things I just showed you on the screen there. First thing, around the need for connectivity, we need to put in place a business scorecard to measure the performance to see are we winning or losing. Because here are some of the benefits that by having a scorecard in place is going to do for your team and creating that connectivity. One, it's going to create a common business language so that when that team is sitting at the table, at the conference room table, discussing performance for the week, when we talk about budget variance, when we talk about quality, when we talk about people, safety, customer service, we're all speaking the exact same language around that. The next thing that the scorecard will do is it'll make the business visual and personal. I work with a company in North Carolina. They got about 1,600 employees at this site. They walk in Monday morning to the employee entrance. There are 32 pieces of paper on the wall next to the employee time clock. The very top piece of paper is the scorecard for the site for the past 7 days. So people can come in to see what was the performance of the site last week, and then the 31 other pieces of paper are the individual team scorecards. So I can walk in Monday morning and see how our site did, that we did not meet our cost number, and then I can look at the scorecard for my team, and I can see, oh, my team is the one that was over budget last week of impacting the cost metric for the entire team. That makes it personal to me and to my team, and it's going to help us try to do things differently, and it's going to motivate us to want to enhance because we're part of a much larger organization. It'll answer that question I said before. Are we winning or losing? Red metric scores can be motivating. There is a belief out there that red is bad on a scorecard and that red is punitive. I absolutely believe that is false. To me, red is good. It gives an opportunity. It provides an area where an organization can improve, where that team can rally together to say, why are we red on the scorecard? What are we going to do differently? Let's turn this around. And then in addition to that, green, hey, green can be motivating. It shows that we're exhibiting the right behaviors, we're doing the right things on a day-to-day basis on a scorecard. So it'll motivate that team to let's keep it going. Let's not stop what we're doing as it relates to that metric around that. This is a basic scorecard template that I utilize in working with companies interested in setting up scorecards. The first column, the key business focus area. Need to identify 4 to 6 key focus areas, maybe quality, cost, safety, people, productivity, customer service. But come up with 4 to 6 key focus areas for your teams, and then take those key focus areas along with this template, and give this template to all those teams and say, okay, I need 3 metrics under each of the key focus areas. 3 SMART objectives under quality, 3 SMART objectives under cost, 3 SMART objectives under people. Let the team, again, come together and create that scorecard so they've got that ownership and buy-in. So you've got the perspective of people from the mature generation down to the perspective of the baby boomers, the Generation X, and the Generation Y. So everyone's got their perspective and really has got their DNA built into that scorecard. The next one's the target. What's the number we have to be above or below before it goes red or green? The owner. Who's the person that's responsible for updating our scorecard by a predefined date so that when we come together, that scorecard is full of data and we can tell within 5 to 7 seconds if we're winning or losing. And then the tracking frequency, the visible indicator, again, red or green is really what I like. Some organizations choose to use yellow. I'm more transparent in that you're either winning or losing around that. But that scorecard right there, it will connect your teams together. It will motivate them because they want to do what's best for the business. Let me give you another example of visual and personal. Right there, that's a scorecard from a team. You look at that, you can see right now, hey, there's a lot of red on there in the area of quality. That team's going to rally together and be motivated to come up with corrective actions on what they need to do differently. Next around, the need for consistency and the need to have accountability in place. And accountability is a term I hear a lot of organizations utilize, but what I've found is what they're lacking is they're lacking a tool for accountability. So I want to introduce you to a tool called an action register. I'll show you a template in just a moment. But it's going to break this cycle of dependency on leaders. And what I mean by that is many times employees come to leaders hoping the leaders can solve the issue when the employees are perfectly capable of solving it themselves. So by documenting an issue that an employee has, we can then empower them on how to solve that issue. It brings visible affirmation of what needs to be done. Who's going to do it, and what's the target date? By when will it be done? So then we can look out to see that the workload is equally distributed. It sparks motivated behaviors in employees regardless of background or generation. So if on this action register are all the things that members of the team need to do, I don't want to be the one member of my team not getting the actions done on time. So it's going to be whether I'm in the Gen Y or the Gen X, it's going to spark me to say, I've got a target date to get that action done of May the 1st. I need to start working on it because I don't want to let my team down. So what we're doing is we're bringing visibility to commitments. And here's an action register. It's a simple tool designed to document critical tasks, ownership, responsibilities, and target dates. The first column, the action. And when you hear people say, and you're in a meeting, you hear people say, I will, someone should, let's do this, those are action terms. Those are people saying, we've got to do this. Many times people attend meetings and we fail to capture these actions, yet a week later we'll be back in that meeting again talking about the same action over and over again. So first column, action, what must happen. Second column is the owner. Only one person can be signed in action. You can't put 3 people's names on there. Because if you put 3 different people's names on there as completing the action, here's what's going to happen. Well, I thought Michael was going to get it done. Well, I thought John was going to get it done. Well, I thought Randy was going to get it done. That action is not done. One person's name. Target date. When do we hope to have that action completed by? Maybe it's the next 7 days. Maybe it's 2 weeks. Maybe it's an action much larger, strategic in scope, and then maybe 3 months. But let's put a target date on there so someone knows what they're working towards with that. The completion date. When was the action actually completed by? Maybe the action for Seth was the target date was May 1st, but he didn't get it done by till May 24th. Well, let's put in the comments field why. Why did it take Seth 23 days? Well, we had other projects come up, other priorities come up. The manager, John, reassigned Seth to do some other things. So let's have that history there of why someone missed that action. This tool right here, this action register, it's going to motivate everyone on the team to collective accountability working towards the business. Again, here's an action register from our software that we use, PBL Scorecard. It's an on-demand software that many of our client companies utilize to manage their business. But you'll see the action. What does it apply to on the scorecard? What does it apply to the team? One person's listed, and then it's color-coded. Let me speak to another way that you can connect people to the business through the scorecard and the action register. I am a firm believer that any metric on a scorecard that is red must have a corrective action or a countermeasure associated with it. And what that requires is the team coming together, talking about why we are red and what we're going to do about it. The final component that I want to talk about around creating that culture of motivation is clarity about communicating effectively. In today's organizations, they believe if we send an email, we're communicating. Folks, that's advertising. We need to have face-to-face, two-way communication where once a week for 30 minutes following this agenda, we come together and we talk about the business. We talk about what's going on, what we need to do. We're going to look at our action register first and just talk about the ones that are due that day. We're going to spend about 10, 15 minutes looking at our scorecard, providing recognition for things that are good, but then talking about when things are red, what are we going to do about it? What's our corrective action around that? Around the table, this is the engagement piece. This is where anybody, and literally I want you to go around the table and say, is there anything you would like to bring up? People have the opportunity to bring up issues, items, concerns, and maybe their question gets answered right away, or maybe it's something that requires an action to take place. Recognition, you'll see this one is in red. Again, recognition is very important. This, in my opinion, is a mental trigger. This is where we say, hey, I want to recognize so-and-so, or it may have been a train wreck of a week and we're not going to recognize anyone. That's okay. but I want recognition built into the culture of the organization, and you're going to do that by having that as an agenda item. Pass up, pass down. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but this is a very critical process in effectively communicating. And on our website, we've got a webinar from February on effective communication and effective meetings, and it talks a lot about the pass up, pass down. Very briefly, the pass up, pass down is a bulletized briefing. What are the 3, 4, 5 things we want everyone in our organization to know over the next 7 days? Action register review. We're just going to review the actions that were just captured during our meeting. We're going to get agreement on what needs to happen, who needs to do it, and by what's the target date. And then finally, the meeting audit. Stop talking about how bad your meetings are down the hall or at lunch or at the water cooler. Talk about how ineffective they are in the meeting. Conclude your meeting by taking 2 minutes and going around the table to say, did this meeting advance the business? And if people say no, or they give it a thumbs down, they got to give a reason why. And typically what I hear is we have people arriving late, people aren't focused, they're on their phones, checking email, or they're texting, there's sidebar conversations, not an effective meeting. Talk about how ineffective the meeting is within the meeting. And then here's an online meeting agenda tool that you see right there with that. I want to pause here. Connor, if you'd launch our final poll of the day around the utilization of some of these tools, please.
Ten more seconds. Okay.
All right, thank you. Folks, I want to wrap up what we've just talked about and about motivating multi-generational teams. And we started off kind of defining the teams and their different needs that they have. I hope that you see these tools I just shared with you can really connect people to the business and around clarity. And it will help foster motivated behaviors, because what I talked about is focusing on what we have in common, not what we have in conflict. And we've got processes in place for what I call managing by the 3 C's of clarity, of connectivity, and of consistency. And then finally, you've got to make recognition our priority and build a culture around exhibiting those motivated behaviors. You've got to be able to provide recognition when you see the behaviors that you're looking for as it relates to the business. So, Connor, it looks like we got about 2 minutes left. I just wanted to see if there were any questions that came in during our time together.
Absolutely, as always, lots of good ones here. As I flip through, here's one that you had mentioned something about one of your clients developing a full-blown recognition process, and someone asked if you could elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, this is a very large organization, and you'd be very familiar with their name. They've got about 5,000 people at their corporate campus, about 40 different buildings spread out. What they do is every Monday, the senior leadership team, when I say the senior leadership, it's the CEO, the president, and then 12 direct reports come together to really do what I just showed you, to talk about the business, review the scorecard. Culture recognition was a huge issue in their organization. So what they did was, at the conclusion of that meeting, there's 14 people in that room. Each member of that team gets a piece of paper with an employee's name, what department, where they work, and what they did during the last 7 days, 14 days that deserves recognition. So that leader then is responsible and accountable for the next 7 days to go find that person, and that may mean going over to walking 5 minutes away to another building, or getting a car and driving over there, going to that person's office, cubicle, or maybe out on the shop floor, and walking up to him or her and saying, hey, we talked about in our meeting what you did to help our organization advance forward. You went above and beyond what is expected. Give them that handshake, that pat on the back, and say, thank you very much. You're valued. You're an important part of our organization. That's intangible, informal recognition. It doesn't cost anything, but yet it motivates the people that see the other person getting the recognition because they want that. That one thing they did has created that culture of recognition. And on employee surveys, recognition is no longer an issue with the employees because there's a defined process in place around that. Connor, any other questions?
Sure. Earlier in the presentation, you talked about how the different generations react differently to how they're managed, and you mentioned something with the action register on breaking the cycle of dependency on leaders. Maybe you can talk about how baby boomers and maybe Gen Y, the differences and how they would react to maybe an action register in use?
Yeah, the personal action register is really designed to be between the manager and the employee, so that when the employee comes to the manager with a question issue, instead of the manager taking on that action, he helps solve that action for the Gen Yers, the baby boomers. And the Gen Yers, really, what they're looking for is validation that I've got a good idea, and I'm just coming to you with it. And so it'll get put on the personal action register, and then the leader will know, hey, I need to follow up with this employee, Randy, about an idea he brought to me around that. So that's really, it's designed to be a follow-up tool so that the leader can follow up on issues that have come up with his or her employees, because frankly, leaders get a lot of drive-bys and hit-runs, and things that they think about are gone within 10 to 15 minutes because the next issues come along. So by putting it on that personal action register, by documenting it, it helps them stay on top of the commitments and the requests they've asked their employees to do. Folks, I appreciate your time. I hope this has been valuable and beneficial. You remember, every Tuesday at 11 Eastern, we send out our weekly tips. Next month, we're going to talk about scorecards and the need to really have a robust scorecard process in place. And I referenced a couple times some webinars. We've got a library of webinars from last year and this year on our website, process-basedleadership.com. I encourage you to take some time. Each one's 30 minutes. Thank you very much for your participation. We have a great rest of Wednesday. Take care. Bye-bye.